Hey, what's up, boys? Josh here. We're in the porch off the back of my shop. I call this Lukenbach, after Lukenbach, Texas, of Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings fame, if you have a taste for good music. I thought I'd just comment a little bit about fly fishing and kind of give you a lowdown on these fly rods. I'm excited to bring them all to you, and yes, I am kind of holding them hostage in hopes that you guys can engage to the best of your ability in the unit of study. I am sure it'll be well worth your time, and will also allow for the investment in you to give returns that are valuable in a symbiotic way, not only to you, but to your world as well. I am going to have to collect the rods whenever I am able to do that. So who knows how long you're going to be able to hang on to them, but you'll have them at home, and you can use them, and I want you to use them. The rods that you're getting are not top of the line. They're also not garbage. You'll see the price tag on them. I've already mentioned that before. But one thing about fly rods is they're shockingly fragile. So really be careful. I'll give you some more tips on how to handle them. But use that case whenever you're not actively fishing. And there's some tricks as to how to best carry the rod when you're on the river. The fly tying kit I'm also going to have to collect when you're all done, but don't be shy about using the materials in there. That's what it's there for. And I hope this camera isn't shaking too bad. I just got a cool tripod for it. I'm psyched about it, but I noticed the wind's blowing it around pretty good. But just keep that in mind as you're utilizing this stuff. So, fly fishing itself, as you may have picked up from the River Y book so far, it's got a very storied history, and it is largely stemming from a very gentrified subset of fishermen who kind of fancy themselves as being smarter than other fishermen or better than other fishermen. And in some ways that is kind of true, but that's not to say that that someone could be excluded from learning how to fly fish, because in the end, there are many types of fly fishing. Some take more academic study than others, and others are really quite simple. None of you guys can do. I always say, when you kind of put all of what is fly fishing and put it in a pot and then boil it down, in the end it's pretty simple. You're hucking out a piece of fur and feather that potentially imitates something that a trout or other fish may eat, and that is about as simple as it possibly can be. So it's really not that complicated. I do want you to understand something though. Fly fishing is hard. It's going to take you a long time to get, and I would actually expect that as you learn to do this, and you're with me, if you are able to catch a fish, especially a trout, you're extremely lucky. I know people that took up fly fishing and honestly didn't catch their first wild trout for 2 years after starting. But that's a part of what I love about it. It is so multifaceted, and it pulls on so many different types of intelligences, and it connects to so many very important aspects of life. So please don't give up. I know you're really excited to get this rod, but do not think you're going to instantly be good at it, because you're not. And if you really pay attention to me and we really can focus, I'll get you caught up to speed. We'll do the best that we can anyhow. My life within fly fishing has been pretty interesting. I grew up fishing at a very early age, and greatly enjoyed. There's this interesting woodpecker over there. Greatly enjoyed trout fishing, especially for mountain brookies, probably since I was like 3 years old on. But I did, I would dig little worms, and I'd use a a hook and a Zebco reel, and then I kind of graduated to a Mepps lure, Panther Martins, and absolutely adored fly fishing all through high school and into college. I didn't really target big fish until I was older. Brook trout fishing was really kind of the one of the anchors of my youth, and we didn't seem to go after kind of larger fish in larger rivers when I grew up. I mean, we did go after bass and pike and things like that, but something about brook trout was just they were the fish we went after, and we'd head up into the mountains and the beaver ponds, and those are pretty special memories for me. Interestingly enough, when I was in high school, I hunted and I fished a lot, but a lot of the people that I hung out with didn't do that, and so I kind of kept it to myself. And I had this awakening in college where, I became unashamed to show everybody else that's what I did. I mean, all my friends knew I did it in high school, but I didn't outwardly kind of advertise it, and that kind of hamstrung me from investing in some of that stuff in a larger way. So it wasn't until, probably my senior year of high school, and after that, I really started fishing hard on my own, kind of breaking away from the traditions of my family, and I started going after larger fish. Now, keep in mind, I still spun fish, and I ended up using Rapalas for trout. Actually, like large Rapalas for big brown trout work awesome, and spinners, and I started having a lot of success and started landing bigger and bigger fish, and this kind of led me to an understanding that there was a whole scene of hardcore fishing that I was kind of missing out at, and that I could be a part of. So I started reading more magazines, reading more books, talking to more people, and heading out into bigger and bigger waters, or more and more technical waters, which brought me away from some of the beaver ponds that kind of proved to be my developmental waters and are still some of my favorite waters. And I started landing big trout, and I got real serious about it. Waking up really early. I now identified as a trout fisherman. Me and my best buddy Trevor, we fished all the time. We were landing 20-inch plus trout on the regular, and we were now bona fide trout fishermen. But I was still fishing, spin fishing with lures, and even live bait. And I think a part of the fun was just discovering these new waters and catching these really big fish. Most of the time I was catching and keeping. I didn't really practice catch and release that often. But I was starting to think about it. I was starting to think about, hey, what's this whole fly fishing thing? I want to do it, but I was definitely intimidated by it. And it seemed like something that maybe was a little out of my league. Maybe I wasn't smart enough to do, or maybe I didn't have enough money to do. But I was learning about, insect hatches and, fish swim bladders and different times of the day and different times of the year and spawning and all these different things, which are slowly giving me a more trouty mind. So I kind of got to the point where I was like, okay, I really want to fly fish. And my dad and my brother recognized I was really getting into fly fishing, and they bought me a fly rod about the same quality as the one that you guys are going to be using. So they spent some real money, and they brought it up to me on my birthday, and I was pretty psyched about it. I didn't know how it worked really at all, and there wasn't YouTube, there wasn't, I didn't have anybody in my life that was a hardcore fly fisherman, so I really kind of picked it up on my own. So when I first started, I was just really depressed, and I was not catching a lot of fish, and it was frustrating because I knew I could catch a lot of fish. And I started to bring both my spin rod and my fly rod, and I'd actually put my spin rod out, sometimes with live bait on a forked stick, and I'd cast my fly rod until I finally got the hang of it, but still I wasn't catching a lot of fish. So I'd now caught a few fish on the fly rod. I was getting used to it, but it still was like, I don't know. I wanted the excitement of catching the more fish that I was catching on a spin rod. But somewhere during that time, I kind of made the decision. I was like, I'm going to be a fly fisherman. And I kind of made the change. And it was around that time that I went to Idaho, where I moved to Idaho. And, oh my goodness, Wyoming, Idaho, the Rocky Mountains, fly fishing is huge. It is a massive industry. It has a whole scene behind it, and the scene turned out to be a lot different than I had anticipated. You know, I grew up with Orvis and tweed coats and fine cigars, and you know that this was a real gentleman's sport. But suddenly out there, it was younger people were doing it. They were, you know, the really cool, you know, scruffy guys that built fires on the sides of the river, but always had the real cool clothes and, you know, talked a little slower and just were a little radder. And there was a fly fishing, bona fide fly fishing scene. And I knew a lot about fishing, and I was just so excited because it was reaffirming. It's like, oh, I know how to do something that these really cool dudes know how to do. So out west, you've got better fishing waters. It's just fact. There are better fishing waters there. And the younger people there were fishing in a scene that really actually ignored that old school gentleman, higher than thou scene of Orvis. Orvis later on got hip to that and started marketing in a different way. But these guys weren't buying Orvis stuff. They were buying from these, you know, younger, flashier, more dirtbag, quote unquote dirtbag, I would say trust fund dirtbag companies. And I was like, you know, I want to be a part of that. And that was it. And from there, you know, I became a fly fisherman full on. And I think back, it's funny because now in Vermont, that same scene has come here, but it was later. It was much later. And sometimes I'm frustrated because I see, you know, suddenly everybody's a fly fisherman and everybody's rad and has a tattoo and, you know, a sage fly rod and a flat brim hat. But the reality is that I probably seemed a little bit like that to those folks way back when I was just transitioning to a fly fisherman in Idaho and Wyoming. So fly fishing has absolutely been a anchor in my life and something probably my favorite thing to do. And it's taken me all over the United States and Canada, and I've caught fish, as you know, from Alaska to West Virginia, you know, to steelhead, Great Lakes steelhead, to steelhead in the Rocky Mountains, and salmon in Canada. I can't tell you how awesome it is and how it connects to so many different things. So I hope you really enjoy this. I am going to need the fly rods back. Please be careful with them. They are fragile. They will break. Take the time and listen to me. We'll get you up to speed, but when you first start, you're going to suck. Don't give up. See you soon.